Who are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to Trusts and Estates Weekly. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we're here every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about estate planning and trust and estate administration from the standpoint of handling our own finances and also for professionals like my guest and me who help people handle these issues. And so I'm really pleased to introduce my guest, Jolene Blackbourn. Jolene and I met, I think, a few months ago now, and she is an estate planning attorney. Has a huge following on LinkedIn, almost 10,000 followers, which shows you how popular she is. So really, like I said, this is I feel like it's kind of a coup to have her on the show today. But also Jolene and I've been promoting this show for the last week on this basis, but Jolene gets involved in an area of estate planning that I think a lot of attorneys and a lot of people involved in estate planning overlook, which is funeral planning. And so when we were talking about this, I think maybe about a month or so ago, I was like, oh, please come on my show and talk about this, because even if you're a professional for a long time in this business, I don't, I mean, I know when my estate plan was done, nobody mentioned that at all, right? I think it's just assumed that, I don't know that, I don't know, my daughter is going to take care of it, or, that it's going to fall on somebody's shoulders. And I can tell you in all of the administrations I've done, there has never been anything said about the funeral arrangements. It all happens ad hoc. So Jolene, thank you so much for coming on the show today to talk about this overlooked but very important issue.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And you're absolutely right. That's exactly what happened to me. I was just ho-humming along with my estate planning, thinking I'm taking care of my clients really well. And then I kind of stumbled across the actual fact that you can pre-plan your funeral, prepay for your funeral. And I thought, wait a minute. I try to make things smooth and easy when my clients are incapacitated with the powers of attorney. And I try to make sure things are smooth and easy after they pass away with the distribution of assets through a will and trust. But I'm leaving empty this one really important week when we get the call or find mom or dad, dead in bed. And it's like, wait, who's going to move this body? What do we do? How are we paying for this? What did they want? And maybe if we knew what they want, like, how are we getting this all together? And it's chaos for like a week. And I'm just giving them chaos right in the middle of all my beautiful planning. So that did not sit well with me. So yes, then I started doing funeral planning as part of my end of life estate planning to make sure I could literally say to my clients, I take care of you from the moment of incapacity until that last dollar is distributed.
So, as you're talking, I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself, I think somehow this got lost. Now, I happen to be a fan of 1950s movies. And in particular, there's a fantastic movie, Doris Day and Rock Hudson, called Send Me No Flowers, where Rock Hudson overhears his doctor talking to what turns out to be another patient, but Rock Hudson gets the idea that he's going to die. And so one of the things he's absolutely intent in doing is making sure that funeral arrangements are made, right? So that it doesn't fall on his wife in her time of grief
Mm-hmm.
to handle them. And there's a great scene with Paul Lind, who's the funeral home director, selling the plot and all this kind of stuff, right? And when I think about it today, it doesn't even seem to come up. So
Yeah.
why do you think this is, I don't know, fallen off of estate planners and people's radar?
Well, I know for attorneys, it is not an attorney product. It's not a legal product. It's an insurance product. So I think, in law school, we're not taught about it. So we're not thinking about it. So on our professional end, it's just kind of out of sight, out of mind. We've never been taught it.
Mhm.
And what's interesting though is if you have your life insurance license, you can sell the pre-needs plans. But I think most life insurance agents or financial advisors are taught the bigger products and not, and again, this is a big product, but
Mhm.
again, for some reason it's also missed on that end, because I talk to a lot of life insurance agents and they're shocked that they can sell this. And then it's just this little niche of people who just happen to come across it, and people make a full-time income just doing this. But yeah,
Mm,
and then the other end is, a lot of people don't want to do their estate plan, right? Because they don't want to think about death.
right.
But even when I get those clients, you would think, and this is what I thought, is okay, I'm talking to them about their estate plan. It's almost like, do you want a fries with that? Like, we're just doing the next step.
Right.
And it is not. It is a whole division line where
Mm,
I can talk to my clients about, okay, so you've got one kid. If that kid predeceases you, where do you want your money to go? Okay, well, so you have one grandkid. Where, and again, if they happen to die in a joint car accident, where do you want the money to go then? I'm going through all these scenarios that are not nice, and they're talking to me all day long. And then I say funeral plan, and they shut down.
hmm.
So weird. So
Yeah.
I'm like, but you're gonna die, right? I mean, that's
That's the
it.
point of this whole thing.
Right. And so people really don't want to talk about it. And so yeah, it's very hard to get them to cross that line. So it's coming from all angles where it's not done, it's not talked about. And yeah, I don't know. Even I still struggle after doing this for a few years to get people to really talk about it with me and do it with me. And
Mhm,
I try to make sure they understand it's not just a huge financial savings and relief of burden to your family, but it can also be fun. It can also be something that's really, this is me saying goodbye and providing a little bit more peace and closure to my family when I pass away, so that it's not just some
mhm,
generic event that my kids had to create on the fly. It is something that, if I have a sense of humor, maybe we're having songs played that are funny, like, Highway to Hell, or, Another One Bites the Dust. Or maybe we're having a flash mob interrupt the whole thing. Or, I mean, there's so many options, and there's a lot of different things you can do with your cremains. It's not just, hey, let's go to the ocean. It's, we can actually, be shot off in a rocket or turned into a record that plays our favorite song and can be given to all the family. I mean, there's millions of options out there if you just take the time to do it. And it will just mean so much more to your family, because then, I mean, closure, I don't think we're ever going to fully find closure when a loved one passes away,
right,
but we're helping them get a little closer to that
mhm,
goal that we'll never fully reach, but
right,
we'll get closer, we'll get more peace, and we'll feel better about it. And I mean, who doesn't want to? I mean, if you've never been to a funeral where people laugh, like, it's a great thing.
mhm,
It really just is a life well led if everyone's laughing at your funeral. And so you really do want that as much as you can. And I'm not saying that happens in every situation. You're
right,
probably not going to have that the younger they are. But when mom and dad pass away, why not have that nice little extra touch of the funny stories, and maybe just, again, something that reflects who they are? And again, maybe it's not a laugh, maybe it's just a smile of that was so them.
mhm. So when I was still in the Navy, as a reservist,
Mhm.
uh, I did a lot of what were called funeral honors, and that was we would show up at a funeral and we would lay a flag on the casket, and you know taps would play, we'd fold the flag, we'd present the flag, right? And oh, we got a weird feedback here. um, so that that was the one area where I found that people um, they found some meaning in a funeral, right?
Yeah.
Because the decedent, obviously was a veteran, and so to have this presentation of the flag, etc., that was very moving. Um, Other than that, though, it seems like um, funerals are they just sort of are what they are. And people don't see the creativity in them. Um, what do you think? What do you think that's about? Because when you, I'll be honest with you, when you said, "Well, people can be so creative," I'm thinking to myself, "Would I want to create a funeral?" You know?
Yeah, I think one, it is a final way to say goodbye, but it's also, again, who is the funeral for? It's for the children, it's for the family. And so you want it to have some meaning to them, some memory to them that really helps them get through that time. And so, for example, I went to a funeral, um, and when the person died, they had led a very creative, full life. And somebody got up, we were all invited to share stories, and the first story that got up was kind of a normal story. The second story that got up was a little funny, and I think people were afraid to laugh. So, there was just this, but then the next story was even funnier, and you couldn't help but laugh. And then it just got worse and worse, or better and better, however you want to go with that. But it was, we were just laughing so hard because he just was such a character. And so, yeah, he was 65, so, on the older end, but also not that old either. And so it was a little, and it was a kind of fast, he was given a 6-month diagnosis and died, fairly quickly. So it was a little bit hard, and but it was enjoyable to be there and to have that moment of relief in your grief where you can actually kind of laugh and let it out and let out some emotion. And yes, we went right back to the grief, when we went to the gravesite and stuff, but it was just so nice to have a break in the grief and to actually really hear who he was and the impact he had on everybody. And I think that a lot of times there's a missed opportunity there where people take it so serious that we're not truly able to learn about this person from different perspectives. What did they mean to their coworkers? What did they mean to their, fellow club members and to their family and all these different people that they impacted in their life? And so I think we take very narrow a scope sometimes, and it really can be, again, it can be a lot more elaborate than just sharing stories. But I did go to one recently that had us dressing in different colors because they felt like that represented that person, that was their favorite colors. So again, it just gives you something to do too when you're getting ready, even just,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not looking for that black dress. I'm looking for a bright color. That's what they want me to do. And so you feel like you've done something for them, for their family, your final goodbye to this person. So it really can help the people who are coming to your funeral by giving them something to do or just a little change of pace for that moment.
Mhm. Now, and listening to you, it sounds like there's two parts to this. There's the sort of financial part, which is the prepackaging that someone with a life insurance license could sell,
Hmm.
and then there's the sort of ceremonial part of it. Maybe I don't know exactly what to call that, but
Yeah.
but there's the actual, what do I want my funeral to be about? So talk, if you would, about um, how you help people, you know, work with both of those parts, right? Because I guess it's in the coming together of them then that a funeral is planned.
Exactly. Yes. So with the what we call pre-needs planning, so you're prepaying for your funeral. Now, first of all, the very first benefit of this, why you want to do this, is because the price of a funeral doubles every 10 years. And they've had studies going back decades to show these numbers, and they absolutely do double. So, your funeral today, if it's going to be a kind of more simpler one and it's going to be around $10,000, in 10 years, that could be $20,000. So, I mean, just think about how much longer you're going to live, even if you're, on that older end and you're like, okay, I mean, I don't know, I have 10, 20, maybe if I'm super lucky, 30 years, you're still going to be saving tens of thousands of dollars. Just imagine your family trying to pay for that, right? Where is your family going to get that money? They're not supposed to use money from your bank account after you've passed away. They're supposed to use their own money. A lot of people tell me, oh, well, I have life insurance, that'll cover it. No, no, it won't, because life insurance pays out after 30 days and your family has to give the mortuary money today. The mortuary does not take payment plans. They want all their money up front. So do you have enough money on your credit card? Do you have space on your credit card? And which child is going to pay for it? Is it going to be all the kids getting together? Because usually one kid has more money than another, right?
Mhm.
And depending on your family dynamics, first of all, usually the kid with more money is the one that's going to be like a little skimpier, and the one with less money is going to be like, we need all the flowers for mom. She needs elaborate decorations and all this other stuff. And we have to invite everyone she ever met. And, the other kid's like, hey, I'm paying for this, and we can just calm it down a notch. And so there's fighting there.
Mhm.
Plus, you oftentimes get, and this is, I'm true with any person who leaves no will and things like that, you get where this kid paid for it and this kid promises to pay them back and then they never do,
Mhm.
right? So you've got all kinds of scenarios where this could go wrong. Don't leave that on your kids. Don't leave it that they can't buy what they want to buy, pay for what they want to pay for, and then they're fighting over the money. Another thing people will tell me is, well, I do have a funeral policy. Well, those funeral policies do not lock in today's prices and they don't pay out immediately. They pay out after 2 weeks. So you still have to front the money. It will come a little faster, but there's still a problem there. So no other policy other than a pre-needs policy locks in today's prices. So that casket price, the earn price, all that kind of stuff, it's going to go up. Lock it in. Same thing with buying your plot. If you're going to buy a plot or a vault, you want to buy it sooner rather than later because, again, those prices just go up.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing that pre-needs does is it locks in the prices, making things, cheaper in the long run.
Mhm.
It allows you to pay over time. So you don't have to fork over 10, 20, 30, whatever your plan is.
Mhm.
You can pay over 10 years if you'd like. So, and like life insurance, you pay once and you pass away, you're in a car accident, it's covered, you're good.
Mhm.
So that's the second thing it does. And then again, stops the fighting, provides the money right away, goes straight to the mortuary. I'm kind of morbid. So the very first thing I asked when I found out about these policies was, well, what if you never find my body? Right? Like, I put in all this money and I don't have a body. And they said, well, actually, you'll never lose the money. So let's just say, yes, you, I don't know, are taken out to the desert somewhere and never found. Um,
All off a ship at sea.
right? Exactly. We just never find you. Um, your family will get that money back.
Oh,
So
mm,
it is okay. That was always my, because I'm like, why am I giving you thousands if maybe I can't use it? It's okay. It'll go to your family. Um, so yeah, so there's a lot of different benefits there. And then on top of that, there's a separate part of the policy. It's $500 and it will fly your body back from anywhere in the world.
mm,
So if you die in another country while you're on vacation, or you just even went upstate somewhere, it's covers 75 miles plus. So I'm in LA. If I were to go to Santa Barbara, it would cost extra to get my body back. But with this $500 policy, it'll bring my body back from wherever I'm at and bring it to the mortuary I've registered with so that my family doesn't have to pay, again, if I was in Europe or something, tens of thousands of dollars to bring my body back. It's
mm.
done, it's covered, we're good. So, highly recommend that for everybody because who doesn't go 75 miles? Like,
Right.
you might think, well, I don't travel much. You don't have to travel much. If you just go across state, you're probably going to need that policy. So there's several different things that are covered in these pre-needs policies that are really, really helpful to the next of kin to
Mhm.
make their lives easier.
And you mentioned you designate a mortuary, so how you
Yeah.
uh, are your heirs then essentially locked in to use that mortuary? And if so, what happens if I don't know, do mortuaries go out of business? I'm starting to think of all the right,
Mhm.
all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah, I know. And it's funny because, yeah, when I first looked into this, I had all these concerns. So, first of all, the policy is an insurance policy. So, it is not formally tied to a mortuary. You
Okay.
do register through a mortuary, but if the mortuary went out of business, you do still have your policy. And let's just say that, yeah, again, using since I'm from California, let's say that I moved from LA to San Francisco and that's where I pass away and that's where I want everything to take place now. That's where all my people are. You can change mortuaries. There is a transfer fee, but it's still well worth the pricing. And again, obviously that pricing will change over time, but
Mhm.
it's well worth the pricing. So it's not a big deal. It's not as bad as waiting to buy the policy and then buying it 10 years later in
Mhm.
your, yeah, I always knew I was going to end up in San Francisco, so I'll just wait. Or,
Right.
yeah, just you buy it now, it's a small transfer fee.
And with, I mean, a lot of people are moving between states these days. So
Mhm.
what would happen if someone, left California? Maybe they moved to, I don't know, Texas, or, wherever people are moving, North Carolina, you know.
Yeah, and again, these are nationwide policy insurance policies, and then same thing with the flying your body home. It is wherever your home has been for the last 6 months. So,
Oh.
yeah. So if you retire to Florida, right, then it will become Florida, even though when you registered, maybe it was California. It's fine. You can just switch it over. What you cannot do is I had a client recently who lives in San Diego, has a home in San Diego. He is, not doing well. He's passing away in San Diego, but he wants to have his body flown to Ohio, where his family's from.
Mm.
Um, you cannot do that because his residence is in San Diego, and they only fly you home to your residence of the last 6 months. And yes, you could have been in the hospital here for the last couple months, but as long as your residence is there, they will fly you back there. But because he actually does live in San Diego, they will not fly him to Ohio. So that's the only downside on that policy, unfortunately. But yeah, wherever you live.
Now, if his um, children, or whoever, if they wanted to pay to fly his remains to Ohio, could the policy still be used for a funeral in Ohio?
Yeah, the policy, as far as the pre-needs policy, yes. So again, the flight, not so much. They would have to pay a couple grand, whatever the cost is that they could get through the regular airlines.
Hmm.
But as far as the actual service, yes, if he had, especially if he had registered there, that would be even, hopefully ideal.
Uh-huh.
But you can transfer it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And what if a decedent, say, registered in California, but all of their children maybe live, I'll use your example, Ohio, and they don't want mom or dad buried in California because they're not going to fly to California to visit the grave, right?
Yeah.
Can they basically, as the, family, say, I know dad was registered in a mortuary in San Diego, but we're going to have the service in, Columbus or whatever, and exercise that authority over the proceeds of the policy.
Yeah, there are some limitations there, so you do have to be a little bit careful, because once that person has stated their wishes and paid for their wishes,
Hmm.
yeah, there can be some limitations. So again, they can move, but for example, if they're executing part of the policy here, they're not gonna be able to split that up. So you can't have body processing here and like a service there. You can forfeit some of the money. You can, there's different things you can do. So, for example, I know some people who are like, we're just gonna have people over to the house, then okay. So you might have forfeited some money and then you're just doing your event at your house. So yeah.
Okay. So there are some constraints on it. So I would think then that if someone is buying one of these policies, they're going to want to talk to their children before they buy it, and maybe, get their input on what's going to happen, so that in an attempt to relieve them of a burden, they're actually not
Yeah.
creating a bigger burden.
Yeah, I always recommend, especially, if both spouses are still alive, or yeah, if the kids are more involved, to have the family around because first of all, half of the funeral again is for the people who outlive you.
Right.
So, and especially if you are going to do something a little off the wall, you want to make sure that they hear you, right? That they
Hmm.
know you're serious. Like, hey, I want to have a flash mob. I'm serious. Like, this is what I want, or I want a harpist, or whatever it is. And to really talk it out because, for example, I had a couple who the husband was a total jokester and the wife was as strict as could be. And she didn't think any of this stuff was funny. And, and he just was so into all these different things. And so, is she going to execute on his wishes if he does go off the wall there? And, you have to talk that out because, you know, maybe he's going to have to put, instead of putting his wife in charge, maybe he's going to put his daughter in charge because his daughter's going to execute his final wishes.
Mm.
You really do want to make sure that the people coming after you are going to do what you want, or that you're okay that they won't do what you want,
Right.
and then you also have to weigh how important is it to you versus how important is it to you that they are okay.
Mhm.
But yes, I've seen all kinds of things. I mean, if you're on like TikTok or Instagram Reels, I mean, there's a guy, he was in Ireland. As they were lowering his casket, you suddenly hear knocking and his voice. And he's like, "Hey, it's dark in here. Let me out." And he's
No.
talking as they're lowering it. And it's just, and you see all these people around this grave and then they're laughing, and it's just like, but yeah, who's gonna make sure that happens, right? If that
Mm.
was you, how are you gonna make sure someone plays that audio? And, will they actually be brave enough to do it? So,
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah, you really do have to talk to the family and make sure, yeah, 'cause aside from, um, my estate planning firm, I do run a separate funeral business where we provide more of these creative items for people, including we provide a grim reaper to come, and literally he is an escort. He doesn't kill people. People talk about him reaping souls, but he reaps souls, not bodies. So
Mhm.
you're dead, he comes and escorts you to the afterlife. So we have that. And, and obviously that's not going to sit well with some people. But for some people, you're going to sit there and say, okay, even if I don't like it, this is so that person. So,
Right.
when we do that, we have to make sure our Grim Reaper is going to be safe to enter the
Mhm.
mortuary or the home or wherever we're at, so that we can do our job of, okay, we are taking the urn and we are removing it from the room to symbolically show, taking them to the afterlife or whatever we are asked to do. But yes, you don't want to just sideswipe, especially the immediate family, right? So
Mhm.
you got to let people know, hey, there's going to be a little unusual activity, or there's going to be a joke, or, so that those who might be offended or those who are in the deepest stages of grief can understand that it may not be what they want, but it's not necessarily about them either. So, but yeah, even just something as simple as a viewing. A lot of my clients are like, "Oh, I don't want a viewing.
Mm.
Nobody should look at my body."
Mhm.
Okay, but you're thinking that you're gonna be 90 and, that maybe you died of cancer or something, and so everyone had a chance to say goodbye. What if, I'm talking to you and you're 45 and you get cancer next year and you die in the next year and your kids are still teenagers? Don't you think that they might need to see you one last time to kind of connect those dots, recognize this really happened and this really over?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
don't be dismissive of the viewing because you don't want it and you're thinking, I'm going to live a long life and my kids will be in their 60s or whatever age. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
we don't all get that opportunity. And so it's important to write down your actual wishes of, okay, I'm okay with a viewing if my kids need it or
Mhm.
if somebody needs it.
Mhm.
Or I'm okay with just immediate family doing a viewing. And so we really break it down because a lot of people are just, yeah, cremate me, no viewing, throw me in the ocean, done. And it's like, cool, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, you're just assuming that you're gonna live a long life and that everyone's kinda gonna be, kinda over it, right? Like, it's just, yes, of course, this is the next stage. And that's not how it goes all the time. I mean, a lot of people die a lot younger than we thought, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. As we're talking about this, as I mentioned a little while ago, my experience with funerals is primarily doing funeral honors. And I remember one time the decedent, who it turned out was quite a large, heavy man, and they had trouble getting him out of the hearse because it was so heavy, and they
yeah.
put him on the cart to wheel him to the grave, and they get onto the ground and it sinks. and there was no way to, and so I had to enlist my entire detachment along with all of the pallbearers, to get this casket to the graveside. And you could see the mix of reactions in the people there for the funeral. Some of them were just appalled, right?
Yeah.
And others were stifling laughter, right? Because the situation was, I mean, it was so ridiculous. I'm in my dress, not my dress size, my service dress, white uniform, the white tunic with the cover, and and all this,
Yes.
and my white shoes, right? And we're struggling to carry this poor, guy to the graveside. So, crazy things happen,
Mhm.
and no disrespect to the family, but I think it just never occurred to them that this was not kind of a typical situation. And really, I think the funeral director should have realized, hey, what happens if the ground had been watered, right? And there,
Yeah.
so I'm going
It's
to take
scary
just
because
I'm so go ahead, yeah.
yeah, no, it's scary because you almost wanna make that joke to relieve everybody,
Right.
but obviously you also don't wanna be that person. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm going to take just a break here to remind all of our viewers. My guest today is Jolene Blackbourn, and she is an estate planning attorney. And we're talking about what I think is the most overlooked aspect of estate planning, which is funeral planning. And this is an aspect of Jolene's practice that she has delved very deeply into, and so she's really an expert on this topic. And before we go back to our talk, I just want to mention that if you, especially if you are a professional and you want to be part of a forum where you can ask questions, offer advice to your fellow professionals, I encourage you to join my LinkedIn group, Trust and Estates Experts. It's kind of like the same name as the show, and all you need to do is go to LinkedIn, just under groups, search Trust and Estate Experts, and click the button. And once I see that you've clicked, I'll click you in to join. And there's a couple of benefits to being a part of the group. One I just mentioned, which is you have a forum where you can bounce ideas off of other professionals, or ask, as a matter of professional courtesy, ask someone maybe in another area, if you're a lawyer, an accountant, a question about a matter you're working on. So it's a great place to do that. And the other thing is, if like me, you produce content, whether it's videos, whether it's articles, it's a great place to get additional exposure to your work so people can see your expertise and know more about you and your practice. I know my friend Lori Israel, who does prenuptial agreements, which is also kind of an overlooked aspect of estate planning. She posts content in there. There's another fellow, I'm going up on his name, I want to say William, but he posts content. So it's a great place to showcase your expertise among people who are actively involved in the estate planning and probate and trust administration world. So going back to the show, this is Trust and Estates Weekly. My guest is Jolene Blackbourn, and we're talking about funeral planning. So Jolene, you were talking about the financial side of it and how those pre-needs policies worked. How does and we started to talk about the more of the sort of ceremony part of it work. So
Mhm.
how does that work? How do you guide people through that? And for want of a better term, sort of memorialize, their wishes.
Yeah, so and again, it has that crossover because if we're pre-planning it, then we can prepay for it, we can make sure it happens. So the first thing is, are you going to be cremated or buried? And so for those who want to be buried, um there are people don't realize this. You don't just have to pick a black or a brown casket or things like that. You can actually, they have where they can put wraps on them so it could be blinged out, but you also don't have to stick to the traditional shape. They actually, I mean, they keep it somewhat, because it has to be your body, but
Right.
people have Twix bars and they have high heel shoes and like
Why?
when you pass away from like an avalanche and they wrap the body on the little toboggan thingy, they have
Oh,
ones like that. I mean, it's crazy what they do. So anything you're into, if you're really like a soccer fan or whatever, they have golf clubs. I mean, it's just you can really be you. And they do have creative coloring as well. So um, I unfortunately went to one of a little boy and his favorite color was orange. So they had an orange casket.
mhm,
So really making it you.
mhm,
And then with the urns, same thing. There's gourds. You don't have to have just your traditional kind of porcelain urn. You can have a gourd, or you can have, if you're going to do it at sea, they have like a compostable thing. Um, so we talk about all the different ways to encase your body, right? So that's
mhm.
kind of step one. And then we talk about disposing of your body. So is it a vault? Is it, are you being buried? Um, if you're being cremated, you can still be buried. A lot of people don't seem to realize this.
Mhm.
You can either be part of a scattering garden at a cemetery, or you can actually be cremated. You can have a headstone just like everyone else. And
Oh.
so your family doesn't have to choose between two things. They can actually kind of have the best of both worlds if that's, you want to be cremated, but they want a place to visit. You
Mhm.
can do that. Um, but they also, again, sky's the limit. And soon, I think in 2026, they're planning to approve composting of our remains. Because right now with cremains, there's chemicals in there, so they're not compostable.
Mhm.
But with the cremains, again, you can be shot off in a rocket. You can become a diamond. You can become actually any gemstone you like. There's so many options. So I go through that with people so that they really understand that they're not stuck. If they want to be turned into a gemstone, maybe, they have two daughters, they could be two gemstones and their daughters have rings made or whatever. Um,
So
and
I
the,
should chime in
okay.
and say if the person was in the Navy,
Mhm.
so they can apply for a burial at sea. I did several of those in my career, and where they were surface naval officers, we did that from a ship. But I also did one for a submariner, and we did a burial at sea from a submarine.
Oh,
And
wow.
this was wild because, I brought the cremains out to the submarine and we got underway. And I'm talking to the captain of the boat, and and I said, sir, here's the thing. He says, yeah, we're not using that for the burial at sea that we film. And I said, why not? And he said, well, chaplain, we're going to let you see why, right? And the reality, when you're on the deck of a submarine, it's windy, and if you pour those cremains,
Oh.
half the time the wind will shift and blow them in your face, and it's quite toxic, frankly. So
Hmm.
what they do is they use flour. So at least if it blows in your face, you're getting flour blown in your face. But that's all it is. But you don't have people literally going, on a video, right? So um,
Yes.
but these are for people in the military, these are options that are available as well that I'm not sure a lot of people know about.
Yeah, and I will say, because I've had this happen, where a service member will say, "I wanna be buried at this particular cemetery,"
Hmm.
and but they've been told that cemetery is full.
Hmm.
And so I've told them, "Don't say that because your kids are then gonna call whenever you do pass away and find out it's full, and then
Right.
they're not gonna know what to do." And they were very specific, "We wanna be buried in LA, not in Riverside." And I'm like, "Okay, so but Riverside has space for you.
Right.
So now what is your kid gonna do? They have to go further?" I mean, you're causing a problem for your kids because you're asking the impossible. You cannot be buried in LA. You've been told this.
Yeah.
They didn't care. They just stopped. So, I mean, I can't stop them, but it's
Right.
just
Right. Yeah.
it's
It's a
just
shame
ridiculous.
because, yeah, the military cemetery over in Westwood has been filled for years. I
Yes.
know when my father passed away, we wanted to do a military, we took him out to Riverside. That was the next closest place that had space, and that's what it is. And they did a lovely job, by the way.
Yeah, and so then you have to say, well, okay, are we choosing an LA cemetery that has nothing to do with the military, or are we trying to find something besides Riverside? I mean, so that you're giving them a huge chore to do at a
Right.
bad time. So don't ask for the impossible. Also, speaking again to that toxicity, there are safe ways to you know spread the cremains just about anywhere. So, for example, a lot of people will say, I want to be scattered in the national parks. Well, that's permissible. Okay.
Oh,
It's not illegal, but you have to do it a certain way and it's not difficult. So, I think a lot of people think, oh, it's not legal. So I'm just going to do it however I'm going to do it. Look up the rules. It's not hard. They just don't want it next to trails and they don't want it next to water.
right.
So just you need to go off trail a bit. You need to just make a small effort, but just read the rules. It's not hard.
Hmm.
And again, I think a lot of people just assume that the answer is going to be no. So they're just like, okay, I'm just going to put it right next to the stream where all the little fishies are now going to get this toxic chemical in their water. So
Wow.
don't do that. Really look it up. It's again, it's not that hard. And then there's also companies that um, have you adopt a tree. So what happen is you basically purchase a tree. You get a little plaque on your tree, so you get your own little headstone. Basically, you
Mhm.
scatter around that tree, and so that tree is always your tree. Your family can come back to that tree, but then they use some of that money to reforest.
Mm.
So you're actually doing good. So, I mean, if you are thinking about, for example, Yosemite, there's actually a forest near Yosemite where you can actually help reforest. So
Wow.
there's different things to look into. And that's what I talk to people about is, whether you're being buried or cremated, what are your kind of goals? What are your, priorities as far as like saving the earth or whatever? Do you love the ocean? Do you love the mountains? All those things we can incorporate all of that.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, some of the services I provide as well is, sometimes families want to give out cremains, right, to all the family or all the friends or all the whatever. And a lot of times they'll just do it like in little baggies or something. And I'm like, so,
Yeah.
we offer little ash boxes and there's different sizes and shapes. We have like treasure chests and we have little glass jars and, you know, just to make it a little nicer.
Mhm.
Um, so that way, especially if friends are like, well, we always plan to go to Thailand and it never happened. I'm going to go next year. I'd like some cremains. Now you have a nice little container and not a baggie. So, yeah.
I know I had both my cat and my dog cremated because that's pretty much, and my cat is in this sort of little tin box, right? But
Yeah.
my dog Jiggers is in this very beautiful wooden box, right, with a plaque on it. So yeah,
Yeah.
things have changed over the years.
Yeah. So yeah, we try to make sure everything is very, every little detail is nice. One of the services we also provide is what we call mourners. And the mourners are, we all have that family member where let's just say, like, if my spouse dies and my mom is kind of an attention person, right? So, like, I'm not going to be able to properly mourn. I'm not going to be able to say hi to my cousins that I haven't seen in 20 years because my mom is just going to be like, me, like, sharing the same story over and over, talking about how sad this is or something. And I'm like, can you stop talking about how sad this is? I just need to like focus, right?
Hmm.
Our mourners will sit with your mom and we will like take the attention away. We'll hear that story that she says to everybody. We'll get her food and drink and make sure that she is just kind of taken care of off in the corner, right? So that you can go do your thing, be the host, the grieving host or whatever, or just sit in your own little corner, right? And just have people coming up to you, but without you sitting next to mom or whoever it is
Hmm.
that is just not letting you do what you need to do. So there's a lot of different aspects to that day and different ways that funerals happen. And so we try to make sure that what do you need? We're here for you. We've thought of it. And yeah, and so for those who are, pre-planning, I mean, they're not going to hire a mourner today, but you can write in, I would like to hire a mourner to, if needed for so and so, if they're still alive, if you happen to know, your cousin's going to be a problem, like, and they're going to probably be there, like, yeah, just
Right.
please, hey, or whatever. So yeah, we talk it through, figure out all the scenarios, figure out the family dynamics and try to help them pre-plan. And of course, pre-planning looks very different when you're 40 versus 70, right? So yeah, you kind of um, yeah have different scenarios.
Mhm.
And yeah, so yeah, I see the comment, "How long will I be a spiritual slave?" It is hard, right? Everybody's grief timeline is different. That's why I say we don't really find closure. We just find ways to work through the grief, ways to memorialize our loved ones in
Mhm.
different ways. I actually had a Memorial Day yesterday, coincidentally. I don't do anything. I don't people. That's what I say. I don't people on that day.
Mhm.
And so I don't work. If it's a work day, I was invited to a party. I said no. I don't people at all. I went to the beach, had a nice day at the beach, and, it's just you have to just keep walking through the paces, and
Mhm.
it is hard. I mean, even I mentioned I went to a young kid's, funeral. It was, my daughter's best friend died at 7 years old,
Oof.
and I helped organize, all the kids drew pictures, for the parents, and I scanned them all, so they would always have a scan copy as well, and so that scan copy lives on my computer, and, it's been 10 years, and it's still, like, hard, and that's, such a small impact in my life, right? But it still kills me when I think about it, and, I'm, like, starting to tear up a little bit,
Yeah.
and it's, like,
Yeah.
much less my own personal deaths, and so, yeah, there's no timeline, and I'm always fascinated. I've had people tell me, their loved one, their significant other passed away, somebody they had kids with, and 3 years later, they're in a new relationship, things are good, and then I've had other people 10 years later, they cannot keep a steady relationship, and so everyone is different, and there's no right or wrong, and there's no, "Oh, well, you clearly didn't go to enough therapy." I mean, it's just everyone is different, and first of all, therapy doesn't work for everybody. It is just not, and it's the timing of it too, right? But there's certain things that can help other people more than therapy, and then therapy is the thing for other people. So it really drives me crazy when people are like, yeah, when I had someone pass away, I think it was like 6 months later, I was invited to a baby shower, and I thought I was good, and then, like, the day before the baby shower, I had to text my friend, "I just can't. I can't be around that much happiness. I'm sorry. I can't."
Mhm.
And, and she was like, "Maybe you need therapy." And it just drove me crazy because it was like, I don't need therapy. I need my loved one back, but I can't have that. So, no, I just need some more time. I can handle happy events at some point, but not right now. I thought I was good. I'm not. And,
This
it's
is
so.
kind of a problem is the wrong word, but I noticed this all my years as a chaplain is um, people either don't want to or feel they cannot take time to grieve for their losses. And losses
Mhm.
are not just people passing away, although obviously that is a somewhat permanent loss. In some cases, losses of a relationship where there is not the finality because the person lost is still alive. Those can be more difficult to process than a death. And I used to talk to my the service members that I took care of all the time. They would come to me and I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, and we dig into it, and inevitably there was some kind of loss at the heart of what was going on with them. And when I would ask them, well, what have you done to come to terms with it? I've never asked them if they'd been to therapy because that almost for sure that was no.
Yeah.
And they were coming to, I was their therapy, coming to see the chaplain, right? And they would
Yeah.
say, well, I had to get back to work, we had to launch aircraft or whatever it was. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well, believe me, I get it. Here's what I recommend is that we figure out a way for you to grieve and just come to terms with this loss in your life. First of all, acknowledge that it is a loss,
Mhm.
and second, that it's a process that you're going to have to work through. It may be short, it may be medium, it may be long. There's no way for us to predict what it is.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to go through it. I had to do this for a sailor on a submarine, right? And he's one of, roughly 110, 120 people, right? Where every crew member is essential, but he had suffered a real loss and he was fumbling at his work. They were getting ready to kick him out of the Navy. And I went and met with his chief petty officer. And I said, look, I think you got a good sailor here. Here's what's going on. I said, if you can give him just some time to come to terms with his grief amid how busy, the ops schedule is for your boat,
Yeah.
I think, you'll go, both of you will go very far. And in the end, he did do that. And it was one of the few cases where I ever found out whether my advice, worked, right? Because the boat came back, a few months later, and the sailor came to see me and let me know, what had happened. So
That's
I
good.
think it's a real tough thing. This idea that we as human beings, we need time to grieve, and again, it's look. I still grieve at times over the loss of my dog. So, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. I should, and maybe it's, for people who are not dog people, it probably sounds pretty silly. But for people who are dog people, for sure they get it.
Yeah.
How close I was to this, this little animal that was a part of my life for so many years. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this. You go through all these conversations, plans. What are they written down? And if so, what happens with that document? What is sort of the process for want of a better term, memorializing the more sort of ceremonial, non-financial aspects of the funeral?
Yeah, so we pay for whatever we can pay for. So some things cannot be prepaid for. So I mean, for example, a mourner coming to your event is something you'll have to buy at that time.
Mhm,
So there are some things we can prepay for. There are some things we can just document we want to have, or we would like to have, if appropriate or whatever.
mhm,
And so for things like, for example, we cannot predict flower prices in the future. So what we do is we kind of estimate a price and we put some money aside for that. So the reason the plan might be 10 grand when you're just doing a basic cremation where that maybe costs around 3,500 is because, okay, so you need to have your priest or whoever coming. And then you're, again, having a mourner come and you're having certain flowers that maybe go above and beyond what you set aside or whatever. Um, so there's different excuse me, two different pots. There's
mhm.
the prepaid pot that's 100% locked in. There's the, well, I should say three pots. There's the prepaid pot that is unpredictable. Your obituary, we don't know how much the newspaper is going to cost.
Right.
We set that price aside as best we can. And then there's the, okay, we didn't quite cover it, or we want to do more, or we want to do something a little different pot. And so, yeah, and a lot of what my people do will say, we'll have the service, but I don't know about a wake. So I'm just going to leave that to the people who are there and they can pay $500, $1,000 for a wake.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so there's the different pots. And so we just help them figure out what they kind of foresee, both for themselves and for their family. And then once you write that down, yeah, it is the mortuary is going to do that. So you have to pretty much know that is what you want to do. And then you have your kind of like receipt basically. And I always tell people keep it with your estate plan, with your, with your trust, and make sure everyone knows you have it so they don't go buying another one.
Right.
And then, you know, call the mortuary. It's all you gotta do. They'll take care of the rest. They will take care of you.
Mhm.
It'll be good. It'll be smooth. And then there's no emotional spending either, right? Because when you're sitting in that chair and mom's just died and they're like, well, do you want everyone to have like a rosary beads, or do you want everybody to have like, should everybody have a photo program? And, and maybe they should or shouldn't, but like you're going, yes, 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 all these things,
Right.
right? So
I
yeah.
remember when my dear Marie passed away. I always salute her at the end of every show, and I'm sitting with the funeral director, and she had picked out a particular casket, and the funeral director said, "Now, are you really going to let her be buried in this casket?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah, it's so hard. So yes, so we try to reduce that spending. So that is, and then yeah, like you said, it's kind of that baseline. But you can walk in and just say, "This is what we're doing," versus, "I don't know what we're doing." So yeah, we got to get the best of
Right.
everything. So that's what you want to be a little cautious of is when you don't pre-plan. That's what your family's going to end up doing. And and what people also forget is you may not die alone. Okay, if you're in a car accident,
Mhm.
there might be mom and dad. You're burying mom and dad. So you're like, oh, I can fit 10 grand on my credit card. Oh, can you fit 20 grand on your credit card? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's,
Mhm.
or more. I mean, during
Wow.
COVID, entire families were getting wiped out at the same time. I mean, what
God forbid.
We don't know what that scenario is. And I'll mention one last benefit. If you do get it while you're young, your children are automatically covered.
Mm,
So if you did ever have to, do a service, cremate, bury your child, it's free. It's covered. Whatever you paid for yourself is covered for them.
mm,
So, I mean, it's bad enough that they passed away. You don't want to have to pay for them to pass away. So this is
mm,
a wonderful benefit, up until they're 18 that will cover them. And I will tell you, I was kind of just doing some research. I went into GoFundMe and I typed in funeral.
mhm.
3 of the first 4 were for minors.
Oh, oh my
So
God.
it's just like, and do you want to be a GoFundMe? Do you want your last memory? I mean, I have a friend right now. He's doing a GoFundMe for his dad. Is that how you want to be remembered? So don't be a car wash. Don't be a GoFundMe. Again, payment plan. You could do something like $50 a month,
Mhm.
and an elaborate funeral could be covered. And yeah, you'll save your family so much headache, so much grief. It'll just help them focus on themselves. So yeah.
Well, Jolene, we're coming up on time here. Thank you so much for coming and talking about this, and also for the openness in talking about it, not just from an advisor's standpoint, but to really climb into some of the emotional issues that attend these situations.
Yeah.
I've started to realize that my background as a chaplain has been much more useful to my work as a fiduciary than I ever thought it would be, because there is a huge emotional component to what we
Yeah.
do. And a lot of professionals, for various reasons, this is not to put them down, but a lot of professionals either don't or can't make
Yeah.
that emotional leap, if you will. And for a lot of people that may be fine, but for many people, I think this is as much an emotional event as it is anything else, and they need that emotional support. So I really commend you for addressing it from multiple perspectives.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to have you hold tight while I wrap up, and then we'll go offline and chat for a minute.
Sounds
So
good.
first of all, folks, if you would like to contact Jolene, I'll put her contact information in the show notes. So after the show posts on YouTube, it'll all be there. A URL to her LinkedIn profile. I'll put her email address in there, and you can get in touch with Jolene and talk to her about any questions that you have. And if you'd like to work with Jolene, I can give a shameless plug for her because I'm not her, right? It's part of my job. Jolene will take care of you. Hopefully you've seen this during the show, but you could not be working with a better professional than Jolene, especially for this for funeral planning and estate planning. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And I'm going to get my topic here real quickly. Yes. You need, if you have a business, you need to have what I call a general quarters plan, which is what are you going to do if if your business is in crisis? How are you going to handle that? You don't want to be handling it on the fly. You want to plan in advance. This is what the Navy does. They'll call general quarters, and everybody knows what needs to be done when crisis hits. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow, 10 a.m. on Business Lessons from the Military. And then on Wednesday at 10 a.m. is my show, People Making Money. And I'm going to be talking, and you may think this is strange for a Trojan, but I'm going to be talking about one of the greatest coaches of all time, John Wooden. He was the basketball coach at UCLA for many, many years. Won, I believe it's 12 national championships in 13 or 14 years as coach. There is a tremendous amount of wisdom that we can learn and apply to our business, professional, and financial lives from how John Wooden coached his teams. And so join me on Wednesday at 10 a.m., excuse me, for People Making Money. And then a week from today, we'll be back with the next edition of Trust and Estates Weekly, and my guest is Tiffany Ballinger Floyd, and she's going to talk about asset protection planning. We're really going to take a deep dive into this aspect of estate planning. So join Tiffany and me for our conversation a week from today. So again, Jolene, thank you so much for coming on the show. Just a tremendous amount of really good information for people to have. I thank you so much. And for my viewers who are watching live, always a treat to see you. Thank you, and really appreciate both your watching and your questions and comments. So all that leaves for me to do is to wrap things up by saluting you, Marie. You are my belle. You know you are, for now and ever afterwards.